From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety podcast. With workplace mental health becoming a safety prerogative, this is the source of information on psychological injury prevention and health promotion.
Hi, and welcome to the Psych Health and Safety podcast. My name is Jason Van Schie, and I'm one of the hosts of the show. The aim of the podcast is to rapidly increase the knowledge and application of psychological health and safety in workplaces worldwide. To help with this, we usually have regular guests from around the world who are leading the way in this important area, but today is a milestone episode for us. We are celebrating our second birthday. So to help with this, we have our regular co-host, Joelle Mitchell, and another regular from our team, Dr. Alicia Pappas. How are you today, Joelle?
I'm a little bit brain fried, but I'm going to do my best.
What's your excuse?
I've had back-to-back meetings all day.
Like, welcome to my life.
Well, I guess that explains things then.
Exactly. That's why I've continually
Always brain
cat brained.
Sure. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, that's right.
Even on the days when you don't have back-to-back meetings.
Yeah, it's like a hangover effect.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Okay. So you're brain fried. That's great.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. I got back from London just not even 2 days ago, but I'm doing all right. What about you, Alicia? How are you doing?
Melbourne town's good. It's Australian Open tennis season. So I've, as I usually do, just been watching tennis every day. But all the Aussies are out now, so I'm a bit not interested anymore. I
did hear, because Netflix brought out that documentary series called Breakpoint, and apparently all of those stars of the future got knocked out already within the first few rounds of the Australian Open. Yeah,
well, Nick Kyrgios didn't play because he had to have knee surgery. Controversial player. But the last Aussie went out yesterday, so... yeah, I'll be going to bed earlier, I think, this week. Fine.
Yeah. Who you supporting now? Who do you want to see win?
I like Tsitsipas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's the top, the highest ranked seed left. Another controversial player, Djokovic. He's playing with an injury, but he doesn't look like he's playing with an injury. I like watching him, so we'll see. There's a few underdogs. I'll keep watching it. I'm saying I'm not interested, but I'll be watching.
Just not till 4 a.m.
Yeah. Yes, that was painful. Last Friday, I went to bed at 4 a.m.
Oh, you actually did it? You went all the way through.
I stayed up and watched the whole match.
Wow, that's commitment.
I did fall asleep, to be fair, at 2 in the 5th and woke up a couple of times, but that was at about 20 past 3. But yeah, it was tough. It was a tough Saturday for me the next day.
Wow. Well, glad that you are not brain fried today, like Joelle. You actually have a good reason to be, not just back-to-back meetings.
No, I'm not.
Yay, sports ball.
Oh, yeah, sports. But look, today is a very special episode. It was almost 2 years to the date that Joelle and I first recorded the very first episode that aired on the 1st of February, 2020. 2021. Yeah, it wasn't. No, you started at the beginning of the pandemic.
No,
it was our first. Lockdown didn't happen. Yeah, no, it was the first lockdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the first, we had original lockdown, and then it was like snap lockdown.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that week.
The Perth lockdown, the second 5-day lockdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, but fortunately we had recorded before that. It was like we knew it was going to happen. So, yes, the first episode aired on the 1st of February, and this one will come out, episode 137, on 7th of February. So just almost 2 years to the date. So some stats, I guess, right? So we have had 125 unique episodes. So even though this is episode 137, we do cheat a little bit and we release 2 episodes a week from our back catalogue during Christmas over 3 weeks. So, but we have had 125 unique episodes as of this one. 102 guests. Who would have thought there'd be 102 people out there that would know anything to do with psychological health and safety?
Hopefully we did. Otherwise we embarked on a foolish endeavour.
Yeah, well, I thought we might have had more repeat guests and all that sort of thing. But there's obviously a growing number of people. And some people that we have interviewed have been from all sorts of life, right? We've had plumber. Yep. We've had a plumber. We've had some other unique ones.
Like we've had lots of people sort of working in like not-for-profit sort of mental health agencies and that kind of stuff.
We've had some people more from traditional wellbeing roles rather than health and safety type roles.
Yep. Lots of academics. We've had
a mental health first aider.
Yeah, people with
despite
safety
their issues with
backgrounds.
mental health first aid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had all sorts, really.
Yeah. So 102 guests. We've done 7 live panels, and we only did 1 last year, and that was really well received. So we'll probably have to maybe not wait till November this year to maybe do another live panel.
No promises.
More live panels are coming, let's just say.
Okay, you're working on it in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. And then 78,000 downloads.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That is a lot of downloads. It's a pretty niche.
I know for
topic.
such a specialised topic. 78,000 downloads is a lot.
Yeah, I'd love to see Dave Proven's stats. I'll have to ask him what his downloads are up to, because he's got a more generic health and safety podcast.
Yeah, they've definitely got a wider audience for safety of work. Yeah.
Maybe Adam Grant wouldn't be too far ahead of us.
Yeah. Sure. I'm sure he's just south of 100,000, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think in the last probably 6 months the most downloaded episodes have changed too much. Alicia, any guesses on who's in our top 3, or which episodes are in our top 3?
Definitely Tony's in there somewhere. Tony LaMontagne.
Yeah, he's number 3. And that's amazing, because he has no LinkedIn presence, right? And generally it's the people who have a bit of a social media presence that get a lot of listeners on the episode. So it's purely...
Everybody knows him.
Yeah, purely reputation. Yeah.
Yeah. He's well cited. Episode 1 has been there the whole way through. Joelle giving her introduction to Psych Health and Safety.
Yeah. And to podcasting and the bright lights without warning. Yeah.
Who else would there be? I don't know. Who's the second one?
Mr. Burrows.
Dave.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he was the second episode to crack 1,000 downloads on his own. So he's done some heavy lifting. The other ones that are up there, episode 87, which is actually just Joelle and myself again, on when we spoke specifically about the Psych Health and Safety regs. So a lot of interest in that topic. And no surprise then, episode 101 with Jennifer Lowe from ACCI was also talking to the workplace health and safety regulations. So what are your thoughts, Joelle?
Yeah, I think that it probably highlights the level of interest in the regs in Australia. And if we look at sort of past the top 5, in that top 10, there are quite a few focused in on the regs, talking to regulators, that sort of thing. So definitely a lot of interest in that. And then, not really surprising that Tony and Dave are in those top spots, just being the OG influencers that they are.
Yeah, and even though we don't play favourites, they were 2 of our favourite episodes.
Yes.
Yeah, very engaging.
But we love all of our episodes equally.
Sure.
Listeners, you didn't see the face that Jason just pulled then, but it might be worth checking out the YouTube video just for that.
Yeah.
I hope you don't do that when your kids ask you who your favourite is.
Oh, they know who my favourite is. Everyone's
you?
got a favourite. What? No, out of my 3 kids. It depends on the day. So they know on the day who my favourite is. So I guess this is kind of a reflection and then looking ahead episode. So reflecting on the year that was, I guess it's worthwhile talking about some of our highlights.
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
Sure. So we did 1 live panel.
We did.
That was a highlight, and I didn't have to present. That was good.
I can't even remember what it was about now. Brain fried.
Yeah, you did it with Wade and Beck.
Oh, yeah.
And Naomi. Yeah.
Now I remember.
Yeah, now you remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, slipping out some things on live podcasts is not, it was memorable, not for the right reason.
Yeah, some of the pitfalls of live streaming.
Yeah, and that's why people have to join the live.
Or not, depending on your perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It depends on your tolerance to insensitive remarks.
Jason, everybody, if you haven't realised yet, has no filter.
Yeah, well, that's what's great about podcasting. Usually, we record it and we can cut myself and gas out.
We just give Jack all of the places that he needs to cut.
Yeah, I blame my Dutch heritage for the lack of filter. I'm struggling because I haven't actually. This is the first time I've actually looked at this question.
Would you like me to go and then you can have a think about it?
Yeah, I think our
I'll go
listeners
and then
would
Alicia can
appreciate
go
that rather than me
instead
just
of you just
stumbling.
humming and hawing.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, so for me, the big one I think is our first cohort through our Catalyst program.
Oh, we're not just talking about podcast highlights. We're talking about. Oh, okay.
Are we?
No. Okay. No. I've got lots of other highlights, but you go.
Right.
You go.
Well then.
Catalyst. What's Catalyst again for those listeners that aren't aware?
So those are where we take a group of organisations through a rapid deployment of psych health and safety, looking at sort of strategy, upskilling the internal teams, and then doing a first round of sort of hazard identification, risk assessment, action planning. So that was, Alicia and I put a lot of work into that, especially around the development of the training materials, and it's been a really lovely group to work with over the last 6 months or so, which has been great.
Also, my key highlight, Joelle.
Good. Lovely. We moved to a new office, so I've got some actual windows, and that's regular listeners will have keyed onto this this thing that I'm keen on, having windows to the actual outside.
Despite your pasty complexion.
Well, I don't get sunburnt through windows generally, and they're not the windows that we have anyway. So that's good. Peter Kelly joining the team.
Yep.
The highlight, and the launch of our UK podcast.
Yep. Just very recent. Yep.
Very, very recent. Yeah, and our new brand being that we've actually finalised. Finally.
Yeah. Thanks, Brendan, for doing that. Finally, making a decision.
Yes.
No changes anymore.
Sure.
Yeah.
So those are some of mine. What about you, Alicia?
Yeah, definitely the Catalyst program. So it's been really great supporting, a cohort of organisations through really thinking about how to effectively implement and embed psych health and safety and understand what, managing psychosocial risks looks like from an operational perspective. I think a lot of organisations, are really wanting to do this now, especially as it's legislated in Australia. The update in the legislation changed last year, so there's a lot of interest from organisations wanting to do this, which is a key highlight. For me, broadly speaking, is the change in legislation and the new regulations, which is creating a lot of interest in this space. But even, when that just started happening, there were already organisations, thinking about what they need to do in this space before it kind of formally became legislated. So, my key highlight is the change in legislation and the updates with the regulations, and then also taking a cohort of organisations through, what that actually means and looks like operationally, and embedding it into systems and processes so it's sustainable over time, and not having, these types of interventions or this type of work as a one-off, thinking about it more systemically. So, that's my main highlight.
Cool. Well, from a business perspective, I've got three. So one is obviously growing the team. So we've got some really cool people that we get to work with every day, and it's really multidisciplinary, right? So it's not just psych health and safety experts, but we get to work with management consultants, graphic designers, marketers, software developers. It's really quite a mixed bag now, and all over the world, like with Peter Kelly now joining the team in the UK. We've already got a couple of people in Singapore. Really looking at that international application. Another thing is just changing our approach to this. So rather than sitting more on the sidelines and providing a software platform to help companies to understand and monitor psychosocial hazards, it's like doing more of the hands-on heavy lifting consulting work through our new consulting or psychological health and safety as a service subscription model. So that's been received really, really well. There's a number of companies that will be joining up on that over the coming weeks and months that we already know of, and plenty more that we're talking to every single day. So there's clearly a need for companies to address psychological health and safety, growing sense of urgency, and companies just need support, not just another app. So definitely glad that we recognise that, and now building out more consulting expertise in our team to support all the companies that need that support. A big piece of work of mine as CEO as well has been about convincing not just companies and professionals to take action, but also demonstrating the importance of this from a social impact perspective to investors. So a big part of my role last year was to secure investing, which fortunately we're able to do. So that continues to mean that we can invest further in our team and in our product and make sure that we stay ahead of the game and providing our customers with the best subject matter experts possible, and also the best technology possible to understand and assess psychosocial hazards and risks. So, from a business perspective, it's been a lot of fun, a lot of hard work, but what they say about everything that's worthwhile takes a bit of work. So
Yes.
Yes.
What about benchmarking?
Benchmarking, that was an interesting one. So it was actually a broker that we're working with who asked us about, benchmarking, and said, hey, have you thought about doing that before? You've got a technology platform, you've got survey capabilities. Have you thought about benchmarking? And I hadn't at that point, but looking around at what companies were doing around benchmarking, or what vendors were providing in terms of mental health benchmarking, was really surface level stuff that I didn't think was inherently actionable. So we got some really good advice from Carla Kapnicka around how to go about developing this. What we wanted to do was around workplace maturity benchmarking of mental health systems and interventions. So we had a group of 40 subject matter experts that we worked with from around the world, 6 different countries, that really helped us to formulate, okay, what are the 10 systems and interventions? How are we going to define them? So it does have that global application, and then how we're going to measure maturity of those systems from, awareness and individual focus up to, collecting data and continuously improving. So, really excited about it. It's not quite finished to the point that I want. Yes, companies are using it. We've had about 40 companies through, and it looks to be double that amount in the next month that would have done that benchmark tool. So some good comparative data in there. But in terms of the reporting back to organizations so that they can understand, where the gaps are, and then insights on how to improve it. Reporting's very close to finishing. It's just like, obviously, with travel and other work commitments, it's been hard, given that I'm the roadblock there to finish that off.
Probably give a shout out to Andrew on that one as well.
Yeah, Andrew Toyer, amazing master's student. Well, it's actually the second master's that he's doing, first one in Australia.
Yeah.
But Joelle has been supervising him as part of his practical requirement. He's one of his 3 placements is part of doing his master's, and he is amazing. So he's done a great job on the benchmarking, and really blown me away. Definitely not your average master's student from what he's been able to contribute.
Yeah, Andrew, we're talking about Andrew's like he's just a student. He does work for one of the big 4 consulting companies in a different capacity. So yes, we're very lucky to have him on board and contributing to our, the work that we're doing and developing new resources and tools and collateral.
Hi listeners, Jason here. We hope you're enjoying this latest podcast episode. Now, if you're like Joelle, Alicia and myself and enjoy learning from the best, then the Flourish DX Academy is for you. The Academy includes free e-learning courses on the ISO 45003 standard for psychological health and safety at work, and associated topics such as how to conduct a psychosocial risk assessment and how to create the business case for psych health and safety. All courses feature high-quality videos, downloadable resources, multi-choice questions, and a downloadable training certificate on completion. Take your learning to the next level with all Flourish DX Academy courses included within the Flourish DX mobile app. Select podcast episodes from the Psych Health and Safety podcast and sister podcasts from Canada and the USA are also included. Get started with Flourish DX for free at www.flourishdx.com/get-started. That's www.flourishtx.com/get-started. Now back to this episode. So that's, so some really great things have happened in the last year. I think we can all agree, both from a market perspective, from a podcast perspective, and then also what we've been doing as an organisation. It's been a lot of fun. So if we think about Psych Health and Safety into the next year for 2023, I'd be interested to hear what your insights are in terms of what you're expecting to see or what you're hoping to see. So maybe starting with you, Alicia, either from a local or an international context, what are you hoping to see in the next year?
Yeah, I think locally, I mean, the change or the update in legislation now has made it very, it's more explicit now what's required of organisations. So locally, I think organisations will start to either include managing psychosocial risk in their workplace mental health strategy, or if they're already doing that, to mature that. So by mature, I mean actually implementing and embedding safe systems of work, not just having, if people are already doing some work in this space, it might just be, surveying periodically, implementing some actions according to their survey results, and then kind of maybe just leaving it without having a systemic plan in place. So, definitely managing psychosocial risk will be something that Australian organisations will be doing more and more this year. And with that, it's actually gaining an understanding of how to do that effectively. So how do we do that effectively organisation-wide? What's that going to look like? Who needs to be involved? Which roles and teams, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, bottom down and then top-up approach rather than just, actions here and there. Internationally, I think it'll depend on the state of work health safety laws and legislation. So countries that have, this type of more explicit legislation in place. So I think Australia's leading the way now with the update in legislation. If countries don't really have specific legislation in place, I think the approach will be a bit more immature. If there is at all an approach for workplace mental health. But then there's been international standards and guidelines published from 2021. So ISO 45003, the international standard for psychological health and safety at work, came into effect in mid-2021. And then September 2022, the World Health Organization published their mental health at work guidelines, and then the policy brief jointly with the ILO. So there's more and more, I suppose, best practice. This is what needs to happen. This is what the evidence shows. So hopefully organizations will utilize resources that are available and evidence that's available to elevate their position in this space. That's what I'm hoping for anyway.
Joelle.
Jason. I think, hello. Similar to Alicia, I guess that I think, the regs are going to have a big impact this year in Australia, just based on the reaction that we've seen so far. The challenge, I think, for businesses is going to be that now that there is a demand created, there's going to be lots of providers wanting to sell things. And as we've talked about many times, the capability of those providers to actually meet the requirements of the regs in terms of actually supporting an understanding of what are the conditions of work that are contributing to poor mental health, and what do we do about those conditions rather than how do we better support workers to cope with those conditions. So I think that organisations who are wanting to or needing to respond to the regs do need to take a fairly cautious approach when they're going to market and looking for support this field. I think in particular, there's probably going to be almost a reflex to just ask the EAP to be able to provide this service as well. And while there are certainly some EAPs who are equipped and competent to be able to do this, I would say that they're in the minority. So my advice to Australian businesses is to really interrogate your EAP, understand what their capability is, get them to explain to you what work redesign means, and really see if they have the competence to be able to deliver this this support in this space. Internationally, I think outside of where there are legislative drivers, I think the other aspect that will be driving things is for organisations who are part of a supply chain with a client in a country that has those legal obligations, or clients, for example, who are reporting sort of Psych Health and Safety as part of their ESG reporting, clients who also are certified or implementing ISO 45003. So for those types of client organisations, I think they will be starting to build expectations into their supply chain that their contractors are also looking after the psychological health and safety of their workforces. So I think that even without the legal obligations, there will be that client-driven requirement for companies to be across this. So I think that that's probably going to be a significant driver internationally. And with, I guess, there will be probably some legislation changes on the horizon as well in Europe and Canada sometime in the near future. So that's my prediction for the year. Jason, what about you?
So what's left? So, well, first of all, I think in Australia there's going to be a large amount of job ads going out for subject matter experts in psychosocial risk. Unfortunately, I think there's going to be hundreds of roles that will go unfilled because there's not hundreds of subject matter experts in psychosocial risk. But I definitely see that companies are going to be looking for support internally to help understand and to operationalise navigating through this new world with the new regs. And that's obviously one of the reasons that we are doing more consulting, to be able to support organisations who can't or don't have the resources internally to be able to do this work. Internationally, I was actually really encouraged going into London last week and running some workshops, having some senior health and safety people there, a lot of them with global remits, and ISO 45003 is definitely on the agenda for a lot of organisations. And they're seeing it as a way to really exercise, even without as strong a legislation as what we have in Australia, like exercising their duty of care to, make sure they're not hurting employees. I mean, in the UK, about half of all illness and injury absence is due to work-related stress, depression, or anxiety. So we know it is, work is having a harmful effect on people. And companies are looking at things like ISO 45003 as a good way to actually put a management system in place that will actually get to the root cause and address these issues and stop causing so much harm that doesn't need to occur. The motivations for it range from, being in the supply chain and demonstrating that you are operating a good health and safety management system to, companies who just see it as a moral obligation to make sure they're not harming people who decide to work for them.
There's also like attraction and retention drivers, right?
That's part of it as well, yeah. But there's a lot of goodwill, particularly from people in the health and safety profession. Look, that's why a lot of those people, or majority, get into that role, because they want to make sure that people aren't harmed and they go home in as good a condition as when they arrived, if not better. Noting that work obviously should be able to have positive benefits for our physical health as well as our psychological health and well-being. I'm quite encouraged by what's happening on the international level. The next challenge for those companies who have adopted ISO 45003 or in the process of doing that is how do they operationalise it? So we're hoping to generate some good case studies of companies who are operating under 45003 of how they've gone about operationalising that at some decent scale as well. Yeah. It's quite interesting what's happening locally and internationally. We know in Canada, speaking to some people we know on the technical committee that's reconvening again this year on their 10-year anniversary, that there will be some updates to the national standard of Canada to align more closely with ISO 45003. So thereby, a Canadian organisation, for example, could adopt either standard and would meet basically the same kind of level. There will be some updates, I believe, that will include some DE&I considerations into the national standard of Canada to keep up with current times. And there has been already apparently a paper written by one of the technical committee chairs to look at what Australia is doing in terms of legislation and to encourage Canada to look at doing something similar. So, maybe they're a few years behind us, but I don't think they would have liked us leapfrogging them in the, who's doing it best, who wore it better category. Yeah.
And then New Zealand is just quietly doing lots of work as well. They're just not being noisy about it.
They're getting some good support though.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. So New Zealand, watch out, they're a dark horse. So I guess more broadly then, one of the questions that we always ask our podcast guests is, what are your hopes for the future of workplace mental health? So maybe not as aspirational as 10, 20, 30 years or our lifetimes, but, for 2023, starting with you, Alicia, what are your hopes for workplace mental health?
I think it's important for organisations to make sure that they're referring to the evidence-based, what's best practice, rather than what they think needs to happen in this space, or not being educated on kind of the what works and what needs to happen. So like I mentioned earlier, just, educating on what resources in terms of guidelines are available, international guidelines, codes of practice if you're in Australia, the state-based regulators are releasing codes of practice in terms of the, how to do this and what needs to happen to support organisations to understand, what's going to be effective. Rely and lean on resources, information that is reflective of best practice. And also, I think you mentioned it earlier, just making sure that there's a subject matter expert accessible, whether that's, having someone internally driving this space or leaning on external SME support, because you can save a lot of time, money, resources if you've got an SME on board in some capacity. So, I'm really excited about, the role that we're playing to support organisations this year as well, providing more of that SME advisory consulting, having that input rather than just being, like you said, on the side or silent in that space. So, exciting times.
And what about yourself, Joelle?
What I would really like to see this year is some genuine collaboration between the health and safety, HR, and other divisions within large organisations when it comes to implementing psych health and safety. So less territory protection, less hot potatoing of ownership of things, and more working together to say, what do we need to do as an organisation to address this? Who needs to take ownership of what? Where do we need to collaborate? And just actually being open to working together.
Yeah, and that's definitely required, and something that I think we bring up at least on the monthly in the podcast.
Just plugging it again.
Yeah, no, I don't think we can say it enough.
What about you?
Yeah, for myself, I really am hoping that companies will heed our advice and look at what they're doing in psych health and safety on a longer time horizon than the next 6 to 12 months. So even today it came up in conversation with a customer that we're talking to. They're looking at doing a global survey of psychosocial hazards, and we're cautioning them before doing that, there's some other steps that they might want to consider, like, building up the competence of their functional teams and their line managers. I mean, what good is it having all this data without having anyone to actually action it, or everyone on the same page in terms of what does this actually mean and why it's important to do something about it. Another thing that has come up is, like as part of that competence uplift is, if you can do that and think about what good looks like in 3 years, rather than just going, we're just going to do a risk assessment and update our risk registers, is you can start to go, well, let's be really aspirational. Let's have systems in place where we're managing psychosocial risk as well as we are like with our physical risk kind of processes. Understanding that not every company has already, maximized what they're doing in that place or like optimize that. But I think that's a good level. And if we can get to a point, because the question came up today as well, like from another person was, what about the individual factors that kind of influence mental health, and like what is our role, or what is the line manager's role in relation to that? I'm like, well, obviously they can't control if someone's going through a messy divorce or if they're, months behind on their mortgage repayments and that sort of thing, but they can, influence things like workload allocation and the support that they're offering, role clarity, all these sorts of things they can influence. And like, if we don't educate them on these things, then they're going to feel like they have to be a psychologist or a counselor and help with these things that are outside of their control. So definitely this competence uplift has to extend to line managers. And then we can get to a point where line managers actually understand, hey, okay, these are the factors that I can control. I can't control these things, so I'm going to work on these things. We're going to make accommodations for you, okay, because you're going through this period. And then if those accommodations have to keep extending, or, the person obviously continues to suffer, then, knowing when to refer to injury management and going, well, actually, we do need some support in managing this as, someone who isn't obviously at their best. They've got some ill health symptoms or something that I can't deal with as a manager, and no amount of accommodations is actually going to, allow this person to be able to perform their role. So I need to bring in injury management now to make sure that this issue is being addressed properly and then, be able to support the person in their return to work. So, there's a massive competence gap at the moment. It's something that New Zealand has identified. So first of all, we need to make sure our functional teams are all across this. We need to make sure then that our line managers are across this. And then we need to make sure, even before we start consulting with employees and doing a psychosocial risk assessment, they have some basic language around what a psychosocial hazard is and why it is that the company is actually interested in investigating these things and what's going to happen with the data. So I see a lot of companies potentially doing this very badly and, really having a bad reputation for this and employees not wanting to participate again. So there's a huge risk to be mitigated. It needs to be done well the first time, and we shouldn't just be rolling out surveys, willy-nilly. We should be really doing that competence uplift as part of, updating our health and safety management systems and other things as part of that setup phase.
Yep.
Long-winded response, I know, but there's a lot of work to be done. I really want companies to be thinking about that, even 3 to 5 year kind of agenda rather than what's happening in the next 6 months.
So just to reiterate as well, then, from your compliance perspective, if you are in Australia, if you've got a plan in place that says this is how we're going to get to where we want to be, and you can demonstrate that you're progressing that plan, and probably, in parallel with that, you might want to do your first psychosocial risk assessment, but bearing in mind that that's your first iteration and it's part of that, 3 to 5 year strategy of actually embedding and creating a safe system of work to support psychological health and safety. If you're able to show that to a regulator when they come to do an inspection, not speaking out of turn, but they're likely to be satisfied that you are actually meeting your duties there because you do have that plan in place. So you don't have to do it all right now immediately, but you're much better off doing it properly, thinking about it strategically, but putting that plan in place to demonstrate this is how we're going to get to that state of compliance.
Hear. All right. Is there anything that we've left out today? I mean, it wasn't meant to be a long episode. We wanted to, take this time out to, reflect on the 2 years that has been and the year that's coming up. Dr. Paps, do you have any?
I think we covered quite a bit there. I was just going to say before Joelle started to speak, and something that we really focus on in our Catalyst program. So when we're taking organizations through, how to do this effectively, is it's really key, to think of it from a strategic perspective, not just jump straight into that. We need data, we need to do a risk assessment. It takes quite a few, I'm going to say months, to come up with, the approach. Especially the bigger the organization, the more, complex it is. What are our comms channels? What does our communication and engagement strategy need to look like before we even start collecting data? Because you're right, if you don't get that right, you can have that initial data, but whether your workforce is going to then engage further with the processes that are required is questionable. So that's all I was going to say on that matter. But I think we've covered quite a bit, and I don't know, Joelle, do you have any other comments?
Looking forward to the year ahead, I guess.
All right. Well, then, listeners, you've heard it here first. Alicia and Joelle have nothing else to say. So on that bombshell, as Jeremy Clarkson used to say, that will be it for today's episode. Reminder that, we will be alternating fortnightly with Peter and Hayley, who are now co-hosting the UK version of the Psych Health and Safety podcast. If you feel like that's not enough content for you from Joelle and myself and Alicia, feel free to look at our back catalogue. And we're pretty friendly, so we're on LinkedIn all the time, so feel free to reach out to us if you want to continue the conversation there. We do also have our Flourish DX YouTube page, so you can feel free to check out some of our past amazing guests and some short clips there. We also publish short clips from the podcast on our LinkedIn page for Flourish DX all the time as well. So if you don't already follow Flourish DX, make sure you get on LinkedIn and give us a follow. But that's it for today's episode. Thank you for following us, those of you who have from the start for the last 2 years. And we look forward to providing you with many more great guests and content over the next year, and maybe even a live panel or two. Maybe. So catch you next episode.
You've been listening to the Psych Health and Safety podcast. To stay up to date with the latest on psychological injury prevention, follow Flourish DX on LinkedIn and subscribe to the Psych Health and Safety podcast at www.psychealthandsafety.com.